My fiancé's mother wants to wear white to our wedding, and he sides with her. When I first met my future mother-in-law, Carol, I knew she was going to be a handful. She's always been overbearing, opinionated, and far too involved in my fiancé Mark's life. At first, I chalked it up to her being a protective mother. But over the years, her behavior has crossed so many lines that I've lost count. I love Mark, but his inability to set boundaries with her has caused more arguments than I care to admit. One of the first major incidents was when we moved in together. Carol showed up unannounced every other day with groceries, decorations, and unsolicited advice on how to properly run a household. She criticized everything from my cooking to the way I arranged furniture. When I gently suggested that she call before coming over, she burst into tears and accused me of trying to steal her son away. Then there was the time she insisted on planning Mark's birthday party. I had already organized a small gathering with his closest friends, but Carol swooped in, booked a fancy restaurant, and sent out invitations without consulting either of us. When I confronted her, she said, "Well, I'm his mother. Of course, I'll do it better than you." Mark's response? "That's just how she is. She means well." I've tried to keep the peace for Mark's sake, but her latest stunt has pushed me to my breaking point. A few weeks ago, we were discussing wedding plans. I was excited to share details about the venue, the flowers, and, most importantly, my dress. Carol, however, seemed less interested in listening and more interested in offering unsolicited advice. She scoffed at the idea of an outdoor ceremony, said my choice of blush pink bridesmaid dresses was too trendy, and then dropped the bombshell, "I'll be wearing white, of course. It's a family tradition." I thought I misheard her at first. "You're wearing white?" I asked, incredulous. "Yes," she replied matter-of-factly. "The mother of the groom always wears white in our family. It's a sign of unity." I glanced at Mark, expecting him to step in and shut this down. Instead, he shrugged and said, "If it's important to her, why not?" "Why not?" "Because it's wildly inappropriate, that's why." I tried to explain to both of them that wearing white is traditionally reserved for the bride and that it would make me uncomfortable. Carol rolled her eyes and said, "Don't be so old-fashioned. It's 2024. Mark, meanwhile, accused me of overreacting and said I was making a big deal out of nothing. The argument spiraled from there. I pointed out that Carol's behavior has been a consistent problem throughout our relationship and that this was just another example of her overstepping boundaries. Mark defended her, saying she's just excited and doesn't mean any harm. I couldn't believe he was taking her side over mine, especially when it came to something as important as our wedding day. After a few days of tension, I decided to talk to Carol directly. I invited her out for coffee and tried to explain how I felt in a calm and respectful manner. I told her I understood she wanted to be part of the wedding, but wearing white would overshadow me on my special day. Her response? "If you're so insecure that you can't share the spotlight for one day, maybe you're not ready to get married." I was stunned. I've always tried to be patient with Carol, but this felt like a deliberate attack. When I told Mark what happened, he brushed it off and said, "You're both being dramatic. Just let her wear what she wants." That's when I started questioning everything. If Mark couldn't stand up for me now, how could I trust him to have my back in the future? This isn't just about a dress, it's about respect and boundaries. I'm not marrying his mother, but it's starting to feel like she'll always have the final say in our lives. As the wedding day approaches, the tension has only escalated. Carol has been telling relatives that I'm controlling and trying to exclude her from the wedding. She's even hinted that she might not attend if she can't wear white. Part of me hopes she follows through on that threat, but I know it would devastate Mark. I've reached a breaking point. I love Mark, but I'm starting to wonder if love is enough. If he's unwilling to stand up to his mother now, what happens when bigger issues arise? I've tried talking to him, but he insists I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. He says he doesn't want to hurt her feelings, but what about mine? The wedding is only a month away, and I'm at a loss. Do I let Carol have her way and risk resenting both her and Mark? Or do I stand my ground and risk a full-blown family feud? I've never felt so torn. Part of me wants to call off the wedding entirely, but I'm terrified of what that would mean for my relationship with Mark. Right now, all I know is that something has to change. Whether it's Mark's attitude, Carol's behavior, or my own willingness to put up with this nonsense, I can't keep going like this. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership, but right now, I feel like I'm fighting this battle alone. Update 1. I decided to leave the apartment to take some time to think. I was lucky enough to be able to stay with a friend, but Mark showed up at my friend's house the next morning. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept at all. To my surprise, the first words out of his mouth were, "I'm sorry." Mark admitted he had been wrong to dismiss my feelings. He said he had been so focused on keeping the peace with his mother that he hadn't realized how much it was hurting me. For the first time, he acknowledged that Carol's behavior was out of line and that he had failed to set boundaries. I told him that while I appreciated his apology, words weren't enough. I needed to see real change. I asked him if he was willing to go to therapy, both individually and as a couple. He hesitated for a moment but then agreed. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right," he said. We also talked about the wedding. I told him I couldn't move forward with it under the current circumstances. He agreed that putting it on hold indefinitely was the right decision. He even suggested we use the time to work on our relationship and figure out how to handle his mother moving forward. A few days later, Mark made a big decision. He told Carol he was going no contact for the time being. He explained to her that her behavior had caused significant damage to our relationship and that he needed space to focus on fixing things with me. Carol, predictably, did not take it well. She called him ungrateful and accused me of brainwashing him. But Mark stood his ground, and for the first time, I felt like he was truly on my side. Since then, we've started therapy, and it's been a game changer. Mark is finally unpacking the unhealthy dynamic he has with his mother, and I'm learning to communicate my needs more effectively. It's not an easy process, but it feels like we're making real progress. As for Carol, she's still spreading rumors and playing the victim. But honestly, I don't care anymore. For the first time in years, I feel like Mark and I are a team. The wedding may be on hold, but our relationship is stronger than it's ever been. And that's what really matters. Update 2. Going no contact with Carol was the right decision for us, but I'd be lying if I said it was easy. For weeks, she ramped up her efforts to get Mark to cave. She sent endless texts and emails filled with guilt trips and accusations. She even showed up at his workplace demanding to see him. Mark held firm, but the stress started to take its toll. Things escalated one weekend when Mark and I returned to the apartment after running errands. We found Carol standing outside our door with a suitcase. She claimed she had nowhere else to go because Mark's father was siding with us and had asked her to leave their house temporarily. She demanded to be let inside so she could sort things out. Mark calmly but firmly told her this wasn't the time or place. He offered to help her find a hotel for the night, but she refused. She screamed at him, accusing him of abandoning her and choosing me over his own mother. When he wouldn't budge, she turned her anger on me, calling me a manipulative witch who had ruined her family. Neighbors started peeking out of their doors, and I could feel my face burning with embarrassment. Mark refused to engage further and told her to leave before he called the police. Carol eventually stormed off, but not before shouting that we'd regret this. The next day, we discovered she had left a barrage of voicemails for both of us. In one particularly unhinged message, she threatened to expose the truth about me to Mark's extended family and friends. The truth, of course, was nothing more than fabricated nonsense about me being controlling and alienating Mark from his family. Mark listened to the messages with a stoic expression, but I could see the pain and frustration in his eyes. Despite the emotional toll, Mark remained firm in his decision to stay no contact. He blocked Carol on all platforms and warned his father about her escalating behavior. To our relief, Mark's father assured us that he supported Mark's boundaries and would not let Carol use him as a pawn in her games. A few weeks later, things took an even darker turn. One evening, we returned home to find our apartment door scratched and a bouquet of dead flowers taped to it. The card attached read, "You'll never replace me." It was chilling, to say the least. We immediately called the police and filed a report. While we couldn't prove it was Carol, we both knew who was responsible. The incident served as a wake-up call for Mark. He realized that his mother's behavior had gone beyond manipulation and guilt-tripping. It had become genuinely toxic and potentially dangerous. He decided to change his phone number and, at my urging, install security cameras around our apartment. It wasn't the life we had envisioned, but it was necessary to protect our peace. For a while, things seemed to calm down. But then came the final straw. Mark received a letter in the mail from his mother, sent through a third party to bypass the no-contact barrier. The letter was an unhinged tirade, alternating between pleas for reconciliation and outright threats. She accused Mark of being a traitor to his family and warned that he would lose everything if he didn't come crawling back to her. Mark didn't even finish reading it. He ripped it in half and threw it in the trash. "I'm done," he said, his voice shaking with a mix of anger and sadness. "She's not my mother anymore. Not the way a mother should be." The breaking point came when Carol showed up uninvited to Mark's father's birthday party, where we had decided to make an appearance. She cornered Mark in front of everyone and started sobbing hysterically, begging him to forgive her. When he refused, she flew into a rage, accusing him of being brainwashed and a disgrace to the family. The scene was mortifying, and Mark's father ended up escorting her out of the house. After that, Mark made it clear to the rest of his family that he wanted no updates about Carol. He told them that while he loved them, he needed to prioritize his mental health and our relationship. Most of his relatives were supportive, but a few accused him of being cruel to his mother. Mark didn't waver. For the first time, he was putting himself, and us, first. Therapy has continued to be a lifeline for us. Mark has made incredible progress in recognizing the unhealthy dynamics of his relationship with Carol, and I've learned to let go of the resentment I had been carrying. We've decided not to rush back into wedding planning, but we're stronger and more united than ever. As for Carol, she's still trying to stir up drama, but her influence over Mark has completely evaporated. She can scream into the void all she wants. We're finally free from her toxic grip. Our focus now is on building a future filled with love, respect, and, most importantly, boundaries. If this journey has taught me anything, it's that love isn't just about being there for each other in the good times. It's about standing together in the face of adversity, even when it comes from the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. Mark and I still have a long road ahead, but for the first time, I feel like we're walking it together. And that's a future worth fighting for.